Well, hello everyone. This is Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to yet another objection that we are going to tackle in this series that we have called the Qibla dilemma. Of course, if you've been watching these videos that we have released so far from this particular series, you've noticed that our brother Dan Gibson is with us here virtually, and he's the one who's really handling the response to these particular objections that are being raised against his data and against his own publications. Today, we are going to deal with yet another objection that has to do with Petra. Last time we talked about Petra. Was Petra a ruined city during the time of Muhammad, or was it actually a functioning city? And I think we proved without a shadow of a doubt from archaeological findings that it was a functioning, vibrant city based on the records that were discovered. Now we're going to talk about another objection against Petra, the fact that the claim, at least, that Petra was not mentioned in Islamic sources, was not mentioned in the Qur'an. So to respond to this claim, we turn our attention again to our brother Dan Gibson. Dan, what say you about Petra being referenced in Islamic sources and in particular the Qur'an?
It's interesting, Al-Fadi, because that was first objection was raised by Dr. King in one of his many objections that he had, and said, well, last time I checked, he said, I checked that Petra didn't appear in the Encyclopedia of Islam. And he's right. The name of Petra wasn't there. Part of that is because we are so used to calling Petra Petra that we don't realize that maybe it had another name. That'd be like if I was talking to an American about the Big Apple and somebody somewhere else in the world like, what are you talking about? And wouldn't know that the reference was to New York. So did Petra have other names? Did it have other titles? Was it known in other ways? And so we need to dig that information out because, yes, the word Petra doesn't appear in the Qur'an and it doesn't appear in any of the histories or the hadith. So what other names can we find? And was it the same, or is it simply missing? So the first thing we need to recognize is what were the names of these mountains? Where Petra was, it has a history. My advantage here is I grew up as a Christian. I grew up reading the Bible. I had a father who did a lot of research, looking at all the biblical history. He loved the Old Testament and he loved archaeology and especially Egyptian history and so forth. So I began to realize very early on in my life that the area around the southern Jordan there were known as the people that were called the Shasu. And so they lived there. And Amenhotep III, in his Egyptian records, he writes about he had a battle with Seir in the land of the Shasu. And so this is the name of the area. These are the mountains of Seir. And the Bible explains to us that Mount Seir was named after Seir the Horite, who was from the tribe of the Horites. And so he was the ruler of these mountains. A very mountainous area, very good place to get in and do, and it would be hard for people to get you out of there. So we can look for the name Seir. And so we read, if we continue reading in the Bible, that Esau took over this area and he lived in Mount Seir and he battled against the Horites and he then became the ruler, as it were. And so the Esau and his descendants, who were known as Edomites, all lived in Mount Seir. So
known as Sa'ir. That's the Arabic word for it, Sa'ir.
Sa'ir. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's interesting if you read in Deuteronomy and several other places in the Bible that when Esau battled the Horites, he also battled against the Zamzumites.
Okay.
That's an interesting name.
Zamzumites, Zamzam. Okay, fine. We're going to talk about that in the future.
Right. So let's just remember that this is the home of the people who their tribal name has ZMZM in it. Zamzam, the
What a coincidence.
Zamzamites.
What a coincidence, yeah.
What a coincidence, in Mount Seir. And so Mount Seir is also, we're told, many years later, the Israelites are fighting with the Amalekites and they're destroying them. They are annihilating them. And the last remnant of the Amalekites flee south across over into Mount Seir, and there they hole up in the mountains. And so the Jewish people have to go down and fight the Amalekites in Mount Seir. What's interesting there is because later we will find that the Qur'an and the other histories make mention that the Amalekites used to live in Mecca. Okay, so Mecca is associated with Amalekites, and Muslim scholars argue and talk about this because the Amalekites are from way up north.
That's right.
Okay, they never got way down to Mecca and Saudi Arabia, but we have association here with Zamzamites, with the Amalekites, with Esau living there, and with Jewish people, and then later the Nabateans. So all of these are little hooks that we have for this area around Petra, and when we look at that, those hooks all are associated in some way with regular Islamic history, but we're not making the claim based on those. Those are just coincidences that help build our case later on, as we go through all these other arguments. Another name is the name El-Rakim. El-Rakim is the name of a king who lived in Mount Seir at one time. And we have, there's some papers that have been published. We can put out there the name of them afterwards. And this, there's a funerary inscription. There's inscriptions in Petra mentioning Rakim. There's rabbinic writings that call Petra Rakim. There's a letter attributed to Cyril of Jerusalem, who calls it Rakim. Some Syriac texts who call it Rakim. There's a homily of Eusebius of Caesarea. He calls it Rakim. The Book of Laws and Countries by Bar Seidun, he calls it Rakim. The writings of Josephus call it Rakim. And also some biblical texts mention the whole area as Rakim. So there's a very strong case that this city at one time in pre-Islamic times was known as El-Rakim. So that is a name that's attached there. And that is a name we can find even in the Qur'an. So we can look at those links.
Right.
Other things that are there in the language of Hebrew, which was the original language of the Jews as they wrote, they called it, the whole name of the place, Sila. Now, Sila simply meant rock, the place of the rock. And so because it's a great rock that has split in two and created a valley down the side and split in other ways, there's all kinds of cracks there and everything. And so it was known as Sila. Now, we're going to get into this because there ends up to be two Silas, and we need to get that clear. But also in the Greek language, the translation of Sila or rock is Petra, which means rock. And as far back as Pliny the Elder, we have Petra, which means rock. And he says that Pliny the Elder says the capital of the Nabateans, the center of their trade route is Petra, this great rock. Now, there is a second place called Petra, and it is also a great rock. And it is north of Petra, closer to the Edomite capital of Bushira, and but the Hebrews called it Sila. So don't be confused. Two Silas, two Petras, depending if you're talking in Hebrew or in Greek. And so you have these two Petras. This is why the Romans called the province of Petria. Petria is the plural of it. So if you're calling it one rock, so if you're using Hajar as a rock, Hajar in Arabic, Hajartain would make it two. So Petria makes it two.
Right.
So we have this name, and we can understand now why it's called Arabia Petria, Arabia of the two Petras. Okay, so the Romans also gave the city other names. So it's not like Petra was the main name. It was really officially called Imperial Colony Antonia. Now, the word colony meant different back then than now. It meant that it was a major settlement that developed smaller settlements out of it. So the whole word is reversed now to mean the smaller settlements when you're a colony. Back then, it was the one who created the colonies. And so that was the name of the city. In the 3rd century, it was officially given a name in Greek, and it was called the Mother of Colonies, the one who starts it. It is the one who begins colonies. And in Arabic, the translation of Mother of Colonies is Qura, the Mother of Colonies. And the Qur'an calls it Qura, and it tells us that is the city of Muhammad.
That's right. That's right.
And so we have this name, Qura, is Arabic, and the Mother of Colonies, I'm saying in English, and it is also there in Greek, and that is the name. So the Mother of Colonies is started. Now, it was also called, as you reread through the Petra scrolls, there's lots of legal documents, so it helps us to get legal names. It is called the Blessed City. And that word is used at that time. It had several meanings. It also could mean the noble city. It could mean the holy city. It was a place of lots of religions. I find it very interesting that when I come to the Arabic language and to Arab people and Arab history, it is it's often known as Mecca, the noble, and Mecca as the holy place, and Mecca as the blessed city.
Al-Balad al-Amin.
Balad al-Amin. You have, there's more than that. Mukarrama, maybe? I'll have to go back and see. Yeah, things like that. These were common names that were used for Petra at that time. When they were writing, they would just say, in the blessed city, is the way they would describe it. Just the way in Islam, they would talk about in the blessed city. And so I find many parallels with that. And the last one is one that will probably take some discussion over time. We'll probably come back to it if people want to discuss this. But there was a man named Thomas Artsruni. He was writing farther north, and he's writing at the very same time that Al-Tabari is writing the histories of Islam. And he's writing the history of his people, the Armenians. And he talks about a place called Mecca. And this is what he says. At that time, in a place in Arabia called Arabia Petra, the place was named Mecca. The Mecca, he says. He showed himself to his brothers, and then he goes on to describe this new leader who arises, whose name is Muhammad.
Right.
So he places Muhammad in Arabia Petra, and he names the town that he's in as Mecca.
Right.
Now, what do you do with that? Okay, so at this point, we know that in southern Jordan, there is Arabia Petra. We know the area. We know the towns were there. And I have a whole video series that goes and looks through this and works through some of this. But the way I interpret this is I think in time there were two Meccas. Just as if you come to Canada, you can find, and in America, you can find lots of names that were borrowed from the countries where the people came from. And so they came up. So even there is New York, but there is York in England.
That's right.
And so people came over, and the names follow. And so many times place names follow. They just go to a new place and they give it the name of where they came from because they're starting something new.
That's right.
And even in many Islam, in the cities, I was in Jordan, the names, the areas of the cities, for a while there, we visited people in Ma'aniya, but they were, the original settlers there were from the city of Ma'an. And so the names followed through where those people live. Right. So it seems to me that when the people first arrived down in Saudi Arabia with that black stone and put it there, they called it Mecca, naming it after the place where they came from, which would have been, as Thomas Artsruni tells us, the place where Muhammad was born was known as Mecca, and that's where he revealed himself. So we have all of these names that are not a problem for Islamic history, because we have Qur'an, the mother of villages, and the mother of settlements. We have Arabia Petra, so we have the blessed city, we have the noble city, and so forth. So we have these names that Petra was known by, and we look in Islamic history and we find the parallels that they call the very city of Mecca is known as Qura. And so where did that come from? How did it get that name? We go to Petra and find out, yes, the city there was also known, but in Greek language, and it means the very same thing. So these names do parallel one another. And finally, we have a reference where somebody says, yeah, and Petra was known as Mecca at one time.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think you did an excellent job for us, Dan. Very exciting information, of course. And
there's a paper written on this, so you can go to my website and you can look it up, and hopefully we'll get that paper published in a journal as well. So,
and what's the name of your website, by the way, for people to know?
It's nabatea.net, and we'll put that up. Every second letter is an A, NABATAEA.net.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, brother. And I hope everyone is enjoying this series. And you probably have heard some of these arguments in the past. Maybe you've heard it from Jay Smith. Maybe you've heard it from Dan directly. But if you didn't, hopefully you find these arguments that we're unpacking here to be helpful to you. You probably have shared some of, because I know a lot of people right now are starting to use these arguments to share it with Muslims to help them recognize that their foundation is based on basically narratives that are not substantiated. So if a Muslim responds to you, hopefully you'll find these tools helpful for you to reason with them and to help them basically reconsider their emotional side of arguments and begin to look into the data. With that in mind, brother, thank you so much. Of course, we will continue with these objections as we keep building up this particular series, and we keep adding more and more of those objections that are, practical, that have been raised, and we want to make sure people can come to this series and deal with them one objection at a time. Last word, brother.
Thank you. No,
all right.
That was good.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. This is Fadi over and out. God bless. Take care. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.